Excellent panel this morning. Axios' Hans Nichols, Tia Mitchell of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and Ested Herndon from the New York Times. Good morning, guys. Nice to see you guys. Let's start off with Trump's comments yesterday, because as he's trying to, of course, reshape America's institutions, whether it's economic, political, cultural, so much of this is driven by this anti-diversity push. And that was really the message that he delivered in large part to the cadets yesterday at West Point. Of course, today is also the 5th anniversary of George Floyd's murder, which has spawned a lot of these diversity efforts. Regardless of what some of what Trump said that is not actually totally accurate. He took credit for ending drag shows at military bases that actually occurred under Biden. But nevertheless, facts aside, what do you make of him taking that message to West Point and how that's really driven so much of his early parts of his administration?
Yeah, it's a focus we shouldn't be surprised at. It's a focus he made clear during the campaign trail, and it also reflects a country that has really backslid, I would say, in some of those commitments over the last 5 years. I was thinking about kind of the then and now post George Floyd summer, that 2025, and almost universally, whether it's corporate, political, even some places in media, you've seen folks make those commitments and really back off of them. And I think it somewhat reflects a reality that some people didn't want to admit, which is a lot of those programs weren't really reaching folks on the ground. And then the right, and Donald Trump specifically, has been able to kind of turn it into a slur. He's been goes beyond just using DEI as the program, but really goes at the fact that anyone who might be a minority, a woman, a person, LGBT person, is inherently unqualified for their job. That's how he talks about it, and that's how he's really had political success. I saw the Defense Secretary Hegseth say the phrase he hates is "diversity is our strength," and that's really what they're trying to roll back on when they think about the military. But even that has an assumed belief there that folks who are diverse are inherently unqualified, and that's really what they've been able to do.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Republicans, and this isn't new, this isn't even new under Trump, but one thing that conservatives have often tried to do when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion is to look at the solutions that were put in place to address systemic and institutional racism or issues with discrimination on myriad issues. And there have been efforts to address that. For example, at West Point, to diversify the ranks of the U.S. Army, in part to help ensure the Army is robust and has the best and the brightest. But what we see some conservatives doing is then making those initiatives the problem. So it's not that the Army lacks diversity, is looking to ensure that it's strong for generations to come, but now those programs put in place are the problem in attacking the programs. And that's what you see in what Trump was saying in his speech. And again, a lot of times how conservatives look at diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And I think that is then that allows them to ignore some of the core issues that these programs are trying to address. They don't even wrestle with those initial issues. Yeah. They just focus on the outcome of the programs in place.
And this is driving to his fight with Harvard as well. This was Trump last night actually posted on Truth Social at 12:51 a.m. on Sunday morning, posting on Truth Social about this battle. Of course, they tried to ban international students. They're still trying to ban international students from going to Harvard. The judge has stopped that. We'll see how that ultimately plays out in court. But he went after them on social media, and then this is just the actions that they have taken. They've cut $450 million in federal grants from Harvard. They froze more than $2 billion in research funding. They're trying to ban those international students. They're threatening to sever its tax-exempt status. They're using the DOJ to investigate diversity initiatives.
Yeah, you have 5 bullet points up there on Trump administration actions against Harvard. You're going to need more, because when you talk to Trump officials and when you talk to just broadly Republicans in Congress, they really want this fight. It's something they feel like they can win on. And the challenge for Harvard, and they're aware of this, and it's been reported, is that there's always another lever that the federal government can pull. If you are an institution of higher learning, you are dependent on the government for, I mean, none of us a week ago were really thinking about the visa issue, right? And then it comes out. So especially folks in higher education, they're trying to figure out how to navigate the Trump era. They have a very tricky road ahead of them because there are just so many other things the federal government can do. And it's clear Donald Trump doesn't want to sue for peace. This is a fight he wants, and he always likes to pick his enemies and define himself in contrast to them, and this is just yet another example.
But the reason why this is so significant is that if Harvard were to lose this case, they have massive repercussions
Yeah.
for the entire higher education apparatus.
There is mass fear in the higher education system in academia right now because of this fight, partially because of what you're saying. They know, the government knows they have these pressure points they can push with Harvard, and it really fits into his theme of retribution broadly. You laid it out at the top, whether it's higher education, EU and tariffs, Apple, any of Trump's perceived enemies that find themselves in the crosshairs of the government right now can have their days turned and their institutions upended somewhat overnight. But this is a total and complete effort by this White House, which Harvard is a proxy. And so, you know, what Republicans have done successfully is really use these institutions like Harvard as a face of what they feel is an entrenched liberal ideology in particularly higher learning. And so I think, we know you're right. They're going to lean into this fight because they want the trickle-down effect. They want the cultural effect. That's the reason they see this presidency as more than just policy, but tapping into culture itself.
And it's culture, it's also political, and you look at some of the people who are being targeted by Trump's Justice Department and other investigations as part of the Trump administration. There's a common theme among all those different entities you see, from Act Blue to Letitia James. There are people that Trump either doesn't like, or perhaps they're Democrats.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's an attack on free thought. It's an attack on free speech, and it's an attack on people being allowed to challenge whether it's the cultural ideology, the political ideology, the moral ideology of not just Donald Trump, but the Christian conservative movement, particularly white Christian conservatism. And a lot of what we're seeing is their efforts to silence those who present, I guess, more diverse lines of thinking on the issues. And we know higher education is a place where you do hear from different types of people with different perspectives. A lot of the Democratic-leaning organizations or places like Media Matters pushes back sometimes on misinformation and disinformation. And I think that's not what the Christian conservatives want right now. They want to control the message, control what people are receiving from these institutions.
It also feels like it goes into a larger backlash against expertise, against research. That feels like it flows out of the pandemic. I think some of it is about the maybe the DEI-ness or these liberal institutions. And I would say, like, there's a fair argument that Harvard and those Ivies may have lost the sauce a little bit. But I think that there's another one that says that that's not what they're doing here. They're not trying to find a solution for that, nor should that be the government's necessarily role. They are intentionally attacking them. And I think expertise, research, and the kind of things that they have been teaching are all under attack.
And it's the power of the government, not just on those issues, whether it's cultural, political, higher education, economic, of course, which is Trump's been the theme through his second term as well, the early parts of it. The tariffs, going after an American company, Apple, just on Friday, then saying you'll go after Samsung if those phone production is not done in the United States, suggesting 50% tariffs would increase for the EU if these negotiations that are happening don't lead to a successful resolution in his eyes. But he's not backing off, even though there are real concerns about the increase in prices. Just look at the number of companies that are increasing prices because of tariffs. These are the big retailers, Walmart, all the way down to Best Buy, to Adidas, and the like. And that's not even talking about small businesses, too, which are going to be rising prices as well. But Trump doesn't seem to be too concerned about that.
There's always a question of Trump is when does he give in, right? In a Wall Street peak, they call it the Trump put. When like the markets go that badly, Trump kind of comes back. What's interesting about all the sort of brands that you had all up there is that we've probably used 4 of those today. Like some of them. I mean, I'm just looking at the Procter & Gamble. I didn't drive a Subaru here, just to be clear. And so, but, you know, we all have our iPhones. I guess we're still allowed to have our iPhones out. Everyone most people in this country have an iPhone, whether or not it's an iPhone or Samsung or a smartphone. That's going to be a direct corollary impact if he stays with this. And I just, like, it's an open question I have. If iPhones go to $3,000, like, is Donald Trump going to keep that 25% demand in there?
Yeah.
And that's just, I throw it up on the table, or maybe I should ask my phone. But it's just an open question to me whether or not he ever cries uncle.
And I think it's also the question is, what does he exactly want? What is he trying to get at? Because is he truly trying to move manufacturing to the U.S.? But if that's the case, why does he then look for a deal? And he says, oh, I brought these countries to the table. So are you trying to just get the countries to come pleading and begging, wanting to come up with some type of agreement that lowers the tariffs but still is higher than where they started. What exactly are we getting at? And I think consumers are starting to realize that no matter what, it's still going to result in higher prices.
Yeah.
But sometimes it comes across that what Donald Trump wants is just these countries to come begging. He doesn't necessarily have a business output or a true goal in mind for the country. He just wants the countries
power.
to come begging.
And we'll see how he adjusts as the midterms draw closer and prices increase if they, in fact, do.